Chaos at Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul as it happened. I'm probably pronouncing that all kinds of wrong. Forgive me. So this is pretty much a little bit of a timeline of what's been going on. This is recent. Let me scroll down to. I guess we can do recent and go down to what's been happening. So let's close summary.
Oh,
Here
they
are the key
started a new one.
developments. Yeah. Uh, U.S. President Joe Biden said the U.S. achieved its goal in Afghanistan. Speaking on Afghanistan for the first time in a week, Biden said the U.S. had succeeded in weakening al Qaeda and that its goal was not to help establish democracy in Afghanistan. He also blamed former President Ashraf Ghani for fleeing the country and criticizing the collapse of the Afghan military. French President Emmanuel Macron said the EU will launch an initiative to thwart the arrivals of Afghan refugees. In a speech laden with comments about security and terrorism, Macron said they would be attempting to stop the expected increased arrivals and would take down smuggling rings. There were desperate scenes at Kabul airport as thousands attempt to flee following the Taliban takeover. Dude, some of those video footage appears to show Afghan falling to their deaths from a plane takeoff. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I saw the video. It's wild.
Oh. Other footage appears to show people clinging to moving aircraft. Some aircrafts did, however, manage to take off with hundreds aboard. I only saw people clinging to the tires. I don't really see any other ones.
I don't understand what those people who fell to their death, like what their thoughts were. Like they had to know they were committing suicide. Like there wasn't like I am going to hold on to this until it lands at the next place. Like there's just I don't understand how they thought that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand it either. Like, is it that level of desperation then?
Is it
Well,
I'd rather die than
yeah, it kind of depends on
stay?
like also who the people are, because there's a lot going on. So I mean, essentially, it's just an entire mess, and it's like the end of the forever war for the United States, and we basically gave the Taliban control of the country, but we didn't intend to. So Trump negotiated the deal to leave Afghanistan. And Biden he lied to the United States saying that there was no way that the Taliban were going to take over Afghanistan ever again, because we had given them 20 years of like billions of dollars, and not just American dollars, but like the international community's money. And we had built democracy and a standing army for the entire country over the past 20 years. And there's an entire generation that's lived in democracy within Afghanistan at this point. And then, push comes to shove, our intelligence agency thinks that they're going to come down in 90 days. But what ended up happening, though, was that I think Afghan intelligence knew what we knew. So what they did instead was they surrendered all the way through. So 90 days turned into 24 hours. And they didn't fight. Like, they didn't fight at all to stop the Taliban from taking over the country. And the main thing that they were, like, worried about was that they weren't going to have an air force anymore, because that's what the big thing that we gave them military-wise. We gave them an air force, so they were able to, like, bomb, like, people who were on mountains and stuff like that when they were doing fire, and they were able to helivac, Afghan National Army? They were able to helivac fighters out of the battlefield and to the home bases and stuff like that. But once we left, after that whole thing was signed with Trump, that they kind of just were like, shit, we don't have an air force anymore, so we're going to be fighting on the ground. And Biden also fucked up in the sense that he didn't plan the evacuation well enough. He only planned to reinvigorate the evacuation, but he was operating off the idea of 90 days because he figured that their standing military that we took 20 years to build for them would actually fight back because they wanted democracy, but they didn't. And so now it's a shit show, and that's why you have 6,000 U.S. soldiers being redeployed to Afghanistan so that they can protect a small like contingent of airports and defend it, so that they can evacuate 110,000 people. And 10,000 of those people are American citizens that they need to get out first, and then 100,000 are people that over 20 years were ambassadors, translators, policymakers, like anybody that ever helped build democracy in that country is now at risk of being executed by the Taliban. So we have to get them all out, and their families. And so that's why you have people like clinging, not only civilians too that don't want to live under Taliban rule because they got used to living under democracy. Maybe they didn't help us, but for sure we're getting out the people that helped us out. But it's also an even bigger shit show because those people are seeking asylum. We have our own border crisis. They're trying to come into the United States. They're also trying to come into neighboring countries, or they're fleeing into neighboring countries.
Yeah.
And we have to process them. Not only that, we have to process them before we can fly them out because we don't want to import somebody who's a family member of whatever these families are, and they're actually like a terrorist. And then we take them straight into the heartland.
What about COVID?
Well, that's another thing too. At this point, COVID, I think, is like a secondary factor because it's just like they stay and they enter Taliban rule and whatever that means, or they get out. But the scary thing is that 6,000 American soldiers are basically playing the Alamo right now on these airports. And if the Taliban decide to attack them, right now they're being cool because of the treaty that was signed, where they were given until like the end of August or something like that, or I think the end of September, and we would be completely withdrawn. And so they're hanging back. But they are surrounding the area, and like American like security forces have already said, like, if you attack us, we will fight back. And so the Taliban publicly have basically said that we're not going to attack. They want to show a new regime. They're saying that they're going to give women more rights, like they're going to allow them to go to school past the age of 8. They're going to allow them to hold jobs, and they're going to allow them to participate in society within reason of like their Islamic rule and Sharia law. But we don't know for sure, and a lot of people are just they don't believe the Taliban. So it's a weird issue, but it's really complex because it's like there's a side of America that wants to leave because the costs have been too high. There's too many lives, American lives have been lost, and there's too much money that has been put into this country for a group of people that don't really want it from some perspectives. I'm not for sure because I've never actually been to that country and seen what the zeitgeist is of the entire people. And then you have the other school of thought, which says that they were actually doing good there, that they were actually creating a democracy, that they were actually giving them a new structure of government that was beneficial or more beneficial. And I do believe there are actually people that like actually went there thinking that, like, you know, because we do have translators out there, we do have journalists out there, we do have like humanitarians groups and stuff like that. And so I do think there are actually people that were like, yeah, let's go help them. Like, let's go give these people a newer society, and whether it's better or not, like, I mean, that's up to interpretation, especially by culture. But it was also fucked up because that government that we put in was also pretty corrupt. And there's like just some horror stories to the extent that like a lot of people didn't even like the government that we put in because the first officials that we put up there that were voted in were warmongers who just kind of scared everyone into voting them into positions. And so it's a whole fucking mess of like a shit show of what's been going on to it. And we're just trying right now to basically just hold our ground until we can evacuate people from a country that's just like closing in. And we just sent 6,000 soldiers. We'd have no idea of what would happen if like those 6,000 soldiers get completely surrounded, and then when they have to fight, like, I mean, for all we know, they could have sent 6,000 soldiers to their death. I don't think it's going to be that harsh, especially since I'm sure the military is ramping up mobilization to protect that area just in case that does happen. And so it's really a really historic moment because there's several like things that happen in like American history that are like this. You have like Saigon that happened in Vietnam, where you have pictures of people sending like babies with soldiers on planes that are leaving the country while they're being consumed by the communists. And this is just another event that's happened within like, I guess, American geopolitics and like neoconism. I find it really profound, and I haven't been able to settle my thoughts on it. That's why I was kind of wondering like how you guys were looking at it, because we went out there to help these people. they rejected all of it and they preferred, to the most part, at least like I would say the most part, because this military group was pretty large, man. I think it was like 75,000 people. They preferred Sharia law as opposed to democracy.
I have a question.
I'm indifferent because I mean the point you made, like you said, an argument could be made one we shouldn't be in the first place, and we were actually trying to get out of there in the first place. The only issue right now, I feel like, obviously what's happening is historical. I'm not gonna, but I feel like the real nuanced argument is just they're upset with the fact about how it happened and how fast it happened. It was supposed to be 90 days. It's happening now, but it's kind of like I understand the argument. Like, wasn't that the end goal?
I have a question.
Do we? And like I guess Doc, you're trying to get to is, do we care about like the type of governance that might happen there? Like, are we supposed to be have I complained about the world police, or do we let that side of the world, like, man, we tried.
Well, this is us stopping to be the world police, and this is kind of like a situation that would happen. But yeah, it definitely for sure should have been executed better. The fleeing part or the evacuation part. Whether or not the 20 years could have been done better, like that's definitely, that definitely, like, for sure could have gone better. It's just how, like, it's up to interpretation for different people and different political views.
Yeah, what were you trying to say, John?
My question is technically, it's not even, so the Taliban is way more organized than we've ever been led on to.
Okay.
American media has never shown us this. I'm kind of surprised. The surprising part is how organized the Taliban is. Like, they have officials. Like, they have, and I'm not saying all these terrorist organizations don't have, but they're made to seem like just a radical military political party, when actually it seems there's they have a certain branding. Like, they're trying to push a certain image. They're trying to, it's just way more organized. And so my question is, what does Taliban rule actually constitute? Well, and what I guess what was the birth of the Taliban then? Was it something that existed prior to us getting there? Because it was made to seem like we went into Afghanistan based off of terrorist attacks.
Yeah, so as far as I know, to answer your question, Taliban rule was like the main political party, which is Sharia law, which is a very strict form of Islam. A very strict form of Islam, like full coverage on women and stuff like that. Like they have very little education and stuff. And we went to go get Al Qaeda, which was
correct.
Militant. They're a militant radical group within the Taliban. And that's when we went in there, the Taliban pushed back. We cleaved through them to get to Al Qaeda, killed bin Laden, and then we had suppressed the Taliban so much that we just kind of stayed there and started to rebuild their government. We've done this a lot. Like, we did this to Japan, we did this to Italy, we did this to Korea, we did this to Germany, and we did this to Iraq. Those were all successes. We failed in Vietnam, and we failed now in Afghanistan. So this is like an American thing that we do. And it's interesting because I actually read like a military theory where we're like the predators of government, where we just show up at a country, we destroy them, and we reboot their governments, and then we leave. And then like whatever's left is like the new society that like they create.
You know what's crazy? You know what made me think? Kind of interesting. You know what made me think of? Aliens. Like, just goddamn come to Earth, see what society has going on. Might destroy us, goddamn.
Think reset. Americans are aliens?
No, I'm just saying that'd be a way, like it's predatorial.
Okay.
Like, it's just, you know, how we're always like, why are aliens fucking traveling? Why are they goddamn doing what they're doing? It makes sense what Doc's saying.
Yes, so this is one of those instances where I think they preferred Sharia law. Although I think now that like they were like, well, when we rebuild it, we have to rebuild it differently. I don't think it's a complete failure. Like, I think
that's what I'm saying. It is
a lot of people have lived under a generation. Even people that are like young people in the Taliban currently, they've lived 20 years under democracy. So I think when they rebuild it, it'll be different. The massacre that might happen though is going to be really intense because they're going to have to. they're gonna have to purge a lot of people from the country that are unwilling to bend, like maybe like purists and democracy and stuff like that. And there's gonna be a lot of conflict because Sharia law is pretty strict in keeping to the faith of their religions. I was
Yeah, where's that
watching it.
video where that woman was complaining about now?
Yeah, yeah, like she's super scared. Like she's used to living. She's probably like 25, so she was 5 years old when we went in, and she's been living 20 years under like American-esque democracy. So you can only imagine like what she's probably never even experienced, like hardcore Sharia law.
I mean, I don't know. It like
And that affects everybody in their society. Cause you're talking about even models on like uh, makeup ads, like just everything set up about democracy. Like,
Yeah, we definitely changed the makeup of like their civilization because now they have a lot of advertising everywhere and stuff like that. And
we modernized them.
I struggle to accept that term of
yeah,
modernize.
Yeah, maybe it's not modernized. We advanced them, I guess.
We what's the word? We clashed with them, I think. Like now they have like aspects of us in them.
That's what I'm trying to get to exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
integrated.
Because I kind of don't
Well,
know if it's. If
I guess the
it's
problem with these words is because
modernization.
it's a level of like it's like they
Any
it
form of
worked.
integration is integration, though. So
Yeah.
that's why.
fair.
I think we just kind of expose them to the outside world, and I'm hoping that maybe just exposing them is enough to change them.
But see, that's my
at the core.
that's my thing. Then, so it's also possible.
But I
and
feel
God
like some of
forgive
these
me,
foundations we have come
it's
from
also
a
possible
democracy,
because
though.
they're used to the 20 years,
We're more of a
and they saw maybe the extremes of the Taliban rule before, that like they are operating out of fear. But what if they don't need to? Like, what if like it doesn't? Obviously, it's not going to be what democracy is, and if that's their real fear, then that's. Cool.
I haven't read Sharia
But
law, so
what-
I don't know specifics.
No, I
of
know
it.
Sharia. I mean, it's eye for an eye. It's like Sharia. Like it's really really biblically old. Like it's really old. So it's like it's just not fair to women at all. But my point is, what if there's an honest attempt from the Taliban government, the newfound government, to in- to change or to have a new regime? I'm just saying. Then it almost
Would
seems
they
like
then be
a lot of
accepted
these
by the
people are
community
operating
that
out of
backed
fear
them?
of what if, because nothing has technically happened yet. That's what I'm saying. Like there hasn't been a purge, so it's still like
And it goes to your point you're
what
trying
if
to make.
this
But we've only
happened?
seen one side of the whole narrative when it comes
yeah,
to
and it seemed a lot more organized than, like I said, I thought. So my question is now, what if none of this happens? God
That
willing.
would be the hope. So I was actually seeing an interview with the Pakistani president, and Pakistan is the country that's adjacent to Afghanistan, and so they actually pulled out and they had a bunch of reports that Pakistan was actually helping the Taliban get back into power, and so they basically grilled the Pakistani president when he showed up on American news, and he told them that he had given 70,000 lives to the war on terror, and that it had put their country in a depression, and so he basically was like, "We're done. Like we're not gonna fight your war anymore with you," and so they were out, and so he kind of said that the people that live close to the border, their race relatives, they might help each other just because of the race. You can't say that the government was doing it, but supposedly the CIA has a huge amount of evidence that says that the government did it in general. It's kind of hard to believe what's going down with that. And he was saying though that the important thing was that there's two outcomes that he was trying to deal with. One outcome is that the country falls back into civil war. It already was in civil war, but we had such a heavy hand, they weren't really doing much. But they were killing Americans little by little. The body count just kept stacking up for 20 years. You know what I mean? And so people were just tired of Americans dying in Afghanistan. So
yeah.
the Pakistani president's worried about a civil war breaking out, a full-fledged civil war without any kind of American influx. And when that happens, it's free for all. Like it's just gonna be just slaughter.
Wild Wild West. Yeah.
Yeah. So that could spill over into Pakistan because there's race relations between the borders, and he doesn't want that. The other outcome, which is the best outcome that he wants, is that they are now an inclusive group and other political parties, because remember this is a religious political party, but now there's like a democratic political party and like whatever other forms of democracy, because democracies have multiple political parties, now a part of that. And he thinks that they hopefully will create a government that's both like just inclusive with all the political parties, and then they govern themselves from that point. I kind of don't think so. They took over too much land way too fast, and like they took it over. Like I don't think there's gonna be a democratic procedure when they go into talk.
And now they have a whole bunch of, guess what? Now the Taliban has a whole bunch of tanks, trucks, helicopters. They have fighter planes.
That's the other thing too. Yeah,
they all belong to the Taliban now.
Yeah.
So we just armed the Taliban.
Yeah, and they're right next to Iran, which is another lost foothold for the United States. So we're basically lost most of the Middle East by pulling out.
Boom. Oh boy.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully I don't know. I feel like
I feel bad for that
really
pilot.
fucking bad for the people that went there with the hopes to actually change them, with the ideology that they could bring democracy to them. And I hope that they get some kind of inkling in that. The cost was just like super, super high. And I mean, even me, like I've never been in that part of the world, but I always, for 20 years, I've just seen the statistics go up and up and up and up and up. And I've always, even myself, I'm just like, damn, dude, like it took 10 years to reform Japan. This one's probably like the longest, or it's going on 20 years. And it's the longest.
It's not sticking.
Yeah, it's the longest we've ever tried. And it wasn't sticking. So it's a really crazy argument, because you have the emotional side where you want to help these people as much as possible. You want to free the women as much as possible. You want to let everybody have a say in government and everyone have a voice that isn't suppressed by religion. And you also have to think about like the logical expenses that were going into the campaign. And I think that after 20 years, the logic just won, man. Yo, you made it to the end. Really appreciate it. Thanks for watching Fake Deep Thinking. If you like the show, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and to share. We really appreciate everything and appreciate you. So take it easy. Peace.
Peace.
Have a good day.